Hi everybody, welcome to the studio. My name is Mel, and I'm here to teach you how to paint. For those of you that have painted with me before, thanks for coming back and seeing me again. It's good to have you. And for those that are painting for the first time, welcome. We're a friendly bunch. We keep things pretty simple, pretty lighthearted. We don't take ourselves too seriously, and we have some fun while we're painting, so it's good to have you here. Let me just talk a little bit about how things are going to go down. First of all, we're working on Sail Away today, which is a great little seascape with this little flotilla of sailboats out on the horizon. It's really simple, I promise. We're going to break it down into bite-sized pieces like always. I'm going to keep things simple and short. When you need time to continue your step, if I'm getting a little ahead of you, make sure you hit the pause button. I don't want you to get stressed out trying to keep up with me. That's one of the advantages that we have to painting at home, so let's take advantage of it. Let's see, I'm going to go through the equipment, talk a little bit about what I'm using, and then we're just going to get going. So like I said, I am painting on these wooden boards today. So if you ordered the all-in-one paint kit, you've got one. It's got a little piece of jute rope that you can hang it with. It's pretty sturdy. I haven't had any issues or complaints about that. Just two little panels, so a lot of times you're going to hear me today use this split here in the wood as sort of a landmark or a reference. Wood's pretty dry, so you may find that it's pretty thirsty as you're painting, and I'll remind you from time to time, use a little bit more water if your wood is drinking it up. But that's the surface we're using today. Again, if you just ordered the video and you're painting on canvas, everything will work out the same. You may just need to adjust the amount of fluidity in your paint from time to time. I've got a palette. Words are hard today. Got my little plastic palette. It's kind of dirty, forgive me. I'm using white, a dark blue, and some brown. That's it, just little tiny bits. We don't have a big surface we're painting on today, and we're not using a lot of paint for anything. So I wasn't very generous with my portions, and I bet I won't even go through all of that. You'll notice I'm using a plastic palette. I prefer to paint on plastic, or use a plastic palette rather than paper. If you use a paper plate, you'll find that as you're mixing colors, you're painting your plate and you run out. And it just sort of absorbs everything. With plastic, you can really work that paint as you're mixing it, and you'll find that your paint lasts a lot longer when you use a plastic palette. If you don't have a plastic palette, a sheet of wax paper or parchment paper will work, or just a plastic lid. That's what I do all the time. I use the lid to take out containers, and then I can close it up, throw it in the fridge. My paint lasts forever. Okay, so palette. Got a cup of water to rinse my brushes out. Dirty old paint rag. I use a washcloth, and then I just reuse it until it's stiff. Paper towel works great too. And I'm using two brushes today. I've got a flat top brush that's about 1/2 inch wide, and then I've got a small pointy brush today. I think that'll be a little bit easier working on our sailboats and our waves. So get yourself set up. I'm going to take a moment and fidget with my easel and my canvas here, or my palette, so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'll be right back. We'll get rolling. Get yourselves a drink. I'll see you in a minute. All right, are we ready? I have mine connected here so that everything is in frame and you can see what's going on. It didn't get longer. I just connected them on the back so that I can keep everything in one spot so that you can see it. Let me move this just a little bit more. There we go. That's better. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is start off by creating where my beach is going to be right here. You can see it's maybe 1 inch up from this bottom edge. My water as it rolls up is really uneven. But what I want to do right now is put the sandy brown down first and let that dry, because then we'll come in and paint the sky and then the water. But by the time we do the water, this section will be dry and we can pull that surf right up onto that beach. So I'm going to use my larger brush, that 1/2 inch brush. We're just going to call it the big brush for all intents and purposes. We got a big one and a little one. There we go. Got the big brush. And I'm going to start by mixing up a little bit of a sandy tone. It's going to be pretty dark. But I'm going to take just a small little scoop of white, about a pea size amount. I don't need a lot. And I'm just moving that over, about a pea size. And then I'm going to get about twice that in brown. And I don't need to clean my brush. I can double dip. It's not guacamole at a party. Nobody's going to care. And I'm just going to swirl that around. And I start off with just, maybe that is a little too dark. Sometimes we get it wrong. Come in and grab just a little bit more white. There we go. What I want is just sort of this creamy chocolate color. Okay. Right there. Give you a good up close of it. We lighten that down. Now, my brush has a lot of paint in it, so you can see I'm just sort of smushing it to try to get that paint off. And then I'm going to dip into the water. I want to get some water on my bristles and work it into this color I've mixed. I want to thin it down so that it's slightly translucent as I paint on the wood. We're not trying to paint this like it's a piece of furniture and get complete solid coverage. So I just want to thin that down a little bit. And you can see here my beach comes up at some points about halfway up this little bottom section. So here's the bottom of our surface, and I'm going to come about halfway up that little wooden slat. And I'm coming across, and I'm coming down and up and down and up. Just think of what that surf is going to look like. And it doesn't have to be an exact shape. We can fix it later. But I just want to sweep this across. Not a lot, not a heavy coat. Whenever I come back for more paint, I'm going to get a little bit more of that sand color. And I'm just sweeping back and forth. You may notice your wood drinking it up right away. That's okay. I just add a little bit more if those dry spots appear really quickly. And reminding myself not to put a complete coat on. I just want a little wash. You can see it right there. And that's it. That's really all we need to do for our beach right now. So let's give this a rinse. When you're rinsing your brush, what I want you to do is just sweep the bottom of your cup. You want to wiggle those bristles around. That's going to sort of make them wiggle around and loosen up and let go of that paint. And then I give it a tap, shake it off, or just drag it like a spatula across the edge of your cup. That'll get out the excess. And if it's really wet, you can just give it a pat onto your paper towel or your paint rag to dry it off. Now we're going to come in and start work on our sky here. Now our sky is pretty much the same color as our sea. It's only divided here by that darker horizon line where we get a little bit darker with our blue in that slat. So I'm going to start by just using a little bit of blue with a tiny bit of white. So how much is a little bit? Well, I'm going to take about a bean size amount, like a kidney bean size amount of blue, and then about a pea size amount of white, and give them a little bit of a swirl. Now when I swirl them together, you'll see there that there's some blue and some white that I leave streaking through there, and that's really important because as that paint, it's going to give me different tones in my sky, and that's what I want. So I've got that mixy swirl on my big brush, and I'm just going to take a little dip into my paint water. It's a little brown. It's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. Let me put my glasses on for this. Now, for my sky, I just want to start at the top and sweep my way across. And we're just going to paint this across the entire top slat. But every time I go to get more paint, I'm going to pick up a little bit of paint and dip those bristles in that water. The wood is thirsty. It's going to want some more water so that it can soak it up with that paint. It's almost like we're staining. I've got to be really careful here because I don't want to hit the painting that's on top of it. You don't have to worry about that. Now you can see I've got some dark streaks come in, some light streaks. That's all good stuff. We say thank you, Bob Ross, and we keep on painting. Every once in a while, picking up some more water, letting it dilute that paint, and I'm just sweeping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Not worrying about it a lot. The wood grain is going to give the painting some texture, and it's not going to leave a lot of brush strokes. So you just want to make sure you have one layer, and it doesn't have to be perfect in any way. There is no perfect here. We just want a few different streaks in the sky, and that blue is going to soak up into the wood, and you're going to end up with almost like the stain. Now, what I would recommend is, once it's dry, if it lightens up too much for your liking, go ahead and put another coat on. There's nothing stopping you. But make sure that you make those decisions before you put your sailboats in. And I'll try to remember to remind you about that then. All right. Just like that. And I'm not going to fiddle with it anymore, because if I do, I'm just going to muck it up. So take your time. Bring that blue all the way across that top board. Some blue with a little bit of white. You can make it a little darker, a little lighter. Just keep in mind, you want it to be lighter than the blue all by itself that we're going to put right here at the horizon to give us a frame of reference, some depth and dimension there, some perspective. Okay, so if you need to, pause, and when we come back, I'm going to show you how to work on that water. All right, I'll see you in a minute. You ready to work on the water? All right, let's do it. I'm not going to clean my brush. No need to. I'm using the same colors for the most part. And what I want to do is just come in and grab that blue all by itself. Remember, take a little dip of the bristles in the water. Want just a little bit of wet there. And I'm reaching right into with these bristles, right into that little slat here on our wooden plaque. And I want that to be the darkest part of this landscape or seascape. So a little more paint, a little more water, and I'm just working my way right across. And I'm coming down outside of that little dip, down that piece of wood, about 1/2 inch, or about as tall as my brush is wide. Does that make sense? About that wide. Just like that. And at that point, I can go back and just pick up a little bit of that sky blue and start sweeping that in for the rest of it. I'm working my way down toward that shore, but I'm not worrying about it. I'm not going to come right up to it. Sorry, I'm looking down. I'm mixing a little bit of paint. That's probably creepy. So you can see I just swirled together a little bit more blue and white. And I'm going to start streaking that through. Again, I'm coming really close to where that sand is, but not quite. And working my way up and back. As water washes up toward us, it's going to be the lightest as it gets the most shallow, right near us on the sand. And I want to leave that darkness in the back so that those sailboats have some deep water to sail in. But I try to keep my strokes fairly horizontal. And the reason for that is if I swing a lot or I do a lot of curved strokes, I may put a lot of motion in my ocean, and that's really not what I want here. So even more so, let me pick this up and bring it a little closer. Even more so, I've got some of that white streaking through there, creating some of that shallowness coming toward me. And I'm just above where the sand is. And at this point, when you are ready, I want you to rinse your brush. Just get all that paint out of it, rinse it, drag those bristles, but don't dry it off. We're going to take this empty brush with that little bit of water and wisp right across. What I'm trying to do is just dilute this little bit right here and just barely glide it right over the edge of that sand. As I get closer, I'm going to pick up a little paint because it's just not going far enough. So I got a little bit of that blue with a little bit more white. And what I'm doing is just wisping back and forth with this skinny edge of my brush, back and forth. And letting that water just sort of work its way onto the shore. I have a little bit of a stripe here, but I'll be able to go in and take that out. I don't want this coming straight across. It's water, it moves. There should always be a little wiggle and movement to it. But remember, the further you come down, the more you're going to lose your sand. So try to take it easy. And I'm just wisping across, leaving little bits of that white, letting that water get nice and shallow. You can see it's not a very big space to paint, so you will get that done fairly quickly. And I just keep coming back and picking up tiny bits of white on the end of my bristles and using that very skinny edge of the brush. I'm just making a few little horizontal movements, a few little wiggles through here. Put some movement in my water. Make it look like that surf is pulling back. And I'm pretty happy with that. Let me move it a little closer again so you can see what's going on. You see how that translucent blue washed over that brown so we can see that sort of sandy effect underneath? Just by thinning our paint down. We didn't have to do anything fancy. We didn't have to do anything technical, but we got a really awesome result out of it. So less is more. You can always add more to it, but you can't take it away. So go easy as you're working on that. Just little wiggles, little bits. And then you can drop that big brush in the water. And when you come back, I'm going to show you how we create the detail on our surf with that little bit of shadow under that frothy shoreline. And then we'll start working on the sailboats. So we're moving fairly quickly through this. So pause, get yourself there. Don't overwork it. Don't keep going until everything blends to one color. Leave those streaks. That's the good stuff. All right, I'll be back in a minute and I'll see you then. All right, so we've got our sky in and we've got our shore in. And that was really quick. What have we been going, like 20 minutes, if that? Maybe 15? I'm going to switch to my small pointy brush. If you've got a small flat brush, that's fine. But what I want to do is just put in this little bit of brown shadow that's going to help add some depth and dimension when we add that little frothy bit of white spray to our surf. So I'm just going to take a tiny bit of brown on my brush. I'm not mixing anything. I just want to dab off any excess. I really want to be careful here and kind of control how much I use. So let me get my glasses on. And just using a very light touch, just right on, just barely pushing on the tip of that brush. Because I want a thin line. I'm coming around the edge of my surf. And I don't want it to be a super clean line like an outline. Part of it will get thicker, part of it will get thinner. That's okay, that just naturally happens. If I have a spot that gets a little flat in my surf, I try to put a little wiggle on it. That'll add just a little bit more of that movement to my water. If it gets exceptionally thick, one thing you can do is just barely brush it down so we have a little bit more of that darker wet sand right there. And just sort of tickle the bristles of that brush. You can already see the difference, how we have shadow here and none here. I'm just going to keep working my way across, slowly and carefully. This isn't a very long painting, so I can afford to take just a few minutes here to be careful. Bring that around. See what's going on. Little bits. You can add a little water if you need to. Sometimes if the wood's really dry, it'll feel like your brush is just scratching across that wooden surface. So adding a little water just kind of helps you glide there. See, everything is just a little bit of a different height. That's really all I'm going to do. Just kind of take a look here, make sure I've got enough shadow where I want it. taking my time, going over what I just did. And then again, if that line is really harsh, I just sort of pull that paint out a little bit. You can even blend it or fade it off a little with your finger. And that's just going to make a little bit more of that dark, wet sand. You know the cool stuff that you try to get to really fast if you forget to put your flip-flops on? That's what I'm talking about. That's what we want. That cooler, foot-saving sand. That or where all the sand fleas get you. I guess it depends on what beach you're on, right? Okay. Now the more I mess with this, the more likely I am to do something crazy. So I think I'm just going to stop there and wait for you to catch up. And then we're going to come in and add this little bit of white. So let's clean that small brush with the pointy tip off. Nice and clean. I just sort of twist it around on my drying surface, your paper towel or your rag. And then what we did with the brown, we're just going to repeat with the white. This time we're going to be on the sea side of the edge of that line. So I'm going to start by taking just a tiny bit of white, moving it over, and adding just a little bit of water to it to thin it down. I'm going to start off slow and then turn it up. It's like seasoning a dish. You start off slow and easy, and then you work your way up. Okay, little tiny bit of that watered down white, very light touch, and I'm using sort of that wiggly motion again, coming right along the edge of that surf. Now, if your paint is too thin, you may see that wood soaking it up and it bleeds a little bit. Don't worry about it. We're going to put some foam over this in a minute. Nobody will even notice. So just those little bits of wiggles. Just barely using the tip of that brush. The more you come back, the more motion you put in there. And I'm not very happy with that, so the way I'm going to fix it is just to put a little blue over it and blend it out. Just a little bit. You can see it gets crazy pretty quickly. So take your time, wiggle your way across that shore. You can even tap a little once in a while. That's called stippling. And that just creates a little foam for you. We covered that in my 10-minute tutorial last week. If you want to take a look at that, it's on YouTube. You can check it out. Although I think that was more like a 20-minute tutorial, but it worked. And again, I'm going to repeat myself, just barely dragging that brush across that meeting of the blue and the brown. Just barely. And every once in a while, just putting in a few little light squiggles, like that water is just moving in. Not too much, just little bits. Little bits. All right. How's this working for you? Any questions, comments, concerns? You know, you can always hit up our group on Facebook, Paint with Mel and Friends, where we post every project that we work on, and people can add tips and tricks, ask questions. We're just basically a mutual admiration society where we cheer each other on. But it's a safe space, it's fun. So come on over and hang out with us. Now, I've got a lot more movement in this bottom one than I do on the top. Let me pull that forward so you can see the difference. This one has a lot more movement. That top one, that wave is just sort of washing in and rolling over. On this one, I got a little crazy. But you know, every wave that hits the shore is going to be different, so why should mine be any different? That's just the way nature is. So now I'm just coming in with that little bit of white, small brush using that very tip, and I'm using that stippling technique where I'm just tapping in a little bit of that foam rolling off the top of that wave. Just as it comes in and hits the water. Just little tiny taps, little bit. You can always put more on if you want to. Take your time. Sometimes it really helps to stand up and step back at a little distance between you and the piece so you can see better what's going on. But take your time. Little taps. That should be a drinking game right now. How many times will Mel say little taps? I don't know, probably at least a dozen. Okay, almost to the end there. And I'm just going to leave it at that point. I can come back and look at it in a little bit if I want to, and add a little more if that's what I need. So let me be a lesson to you. The more you put in there, the crazier it's going to get. So go easy. When you're ready, come back and we'll finish up by adding our little sailboats. All right, I'll see you in a minute. All right, so we've got our sky, our sea, and our sand in, and now it's time for the sailboats. Are you ready? They're really easy, and let me show you why. I'm going to use a piece of paper here to demonstrate how I make the shape of these sailboats, because really all we see is a little silhouette out on the horizon. So let's just draw a little horizon line here, right? That's where, here's the sky, and here's the sea. So to create the sailboat, I just make a sail, which is just sort of like a triangle with a little curve to it. So we've got a long line and then a curve. You can connect them with a little more curve. The bottom of the boat, just like a banana. So for the bottom of the boat, straight line, parenthesis, not quite a semicircle. For the sail, you can make a line that's fairly vertical but a little bit angled, and then a semicircle on the other side. And then what I do is I just connect that line, paint that in. Nobody knows. But play with those. You've got a practice surface, hopefully, that you can do a couple little practice ones, draw a few with a pencil. You can even use a pencil to draw them in on your board if you like. Just be mindful you don't want that line to be too dark because the white will have a hard time covering it up. So I'm going to clean and get my small brush ready. Sometimes I like to just take it and give the bristles a little pinch and twist them, and that brings everything back to a nice pointy tip. And I'm just going to start with a tiny bit of white. And where I put my sailboats is entirely up to me, and yours is you. I like to make mine off-center. Don't ever like to put anything center because then my brain expects it to be symmetrical, and that messes me up. So I'm going to go slightly off-center and start with the biggest one. So my sail is going to be above the slit, and the boat is going to be below. So I'm just going to create that long line of the sail with the fine tip of that brush, and then my half circle, and then smooth it out and connect it. Get a little more paint and fill this in. Now don't put the paint on too thick. We can always come back and add some more. But we want this to dry, and then we can come back in and see if we need a little more. We're brushing against the grain right now, so you may find that your brush skips a little section. Just use the very tip of those bristles and tickle that in. And if you're really fussy, you can use the very tip to angle down into that little slit, our little separation there. Now, let's do the bottom of the boat. Remember, it's just a banana shape. So right here, right at about that little slit just below it, I'm making a line that's a little bit wider than my sail, and then that small little banana shape. Don't worry, we'll come in and blur that out in a minute. Now we can repeat this in varying sizes for our little flotilla here. I'm going to do a smaller one next to it, Mix it up. I start off small because we can make them bigger. We can't make them smaller. I say that a lot, but it's true. And I'm really not even trying to make these look like boats, just as long as I have that silhouette, that banana shape correct. And one thing I learned is to make sure that all your sails are billowing in the same direction, because otherwise that's going to be a little bit confusing. Your brain would be like, wait, why is the wind blowing in all those different directions? Barely tickle the edge of those lines to get them cleaned up. Add your little boat. Put another little guy over here, maybe sort of a medium. And I always try to do an odd number, because again, otherwise my brain wants to pair things off. But do you, boo, whatever's working for you. You can do 3 across if that's what you wanted. I'm going to stick with the 5 because I'm kind of lazy. There we go. Oh, I'm just going to spend a moment cleaning up some of these edges. But remember, the more you mess with them, the bigger they're going to get. So just take your time and barely use the very tip of that bristle. Bring that down. There we go. We got some sailboats. Ooh, that guy's really curved. I'm painting from the side a little more than usual, so I have to stop and kind of come around the front and see what's going on. Hopefully you're painting face first or directly in front of your face instead of sideways. Makes it a little trickier. Okay, there we go. That's a little better. Now what I like to do at this point is just come back to that white and blue mix that we used earlier. Maybe a little bit darker. I want it to be just a little bit lighter than our dark blue. And I'm just going to put a few little wiggles in my water here. Not a lot. We're not causing a lot of commotion, but just a little bit more movement there. Maybe like a reflection of that sail on the boat. Just that little bit makes things look like they're moving for us. All right. Now at this point, pause it, get your sailboats in. I am going to come in and just do a little bit of fiddling with my water here. Got a good front-on view and I can see that I've got some unevenness going on. So if you want, come on back and I'll walk you through that. I'll see you in a second. Okay, we're down to final details, and this is pretty easy. I've got my small brush and I'm just coming through with a little tiny bit of that lighter blue with a little white in it. And just filling in where I feel like the wood really soaked it up here, where the water is shallower. And I'm just working my way across, just trying to add a little bit more of that blue. But the water is important, adding water to that paint. Especially if it's a lot lighter, because then the wood will soak it up and you won't end up with like a completely bright spot. It'll sort of help forgive any sins we commit. Keep going back for more water. Just adding in a little bit more of this shallow stuff because I feel like it kind of all got lost. Now, if you wanted to add some green to your ocean, that would be another great way to do it. It's a little late for that now. Don't know why I'm suggesting it, but you know, that's how my brain works. Maybe I'm thinking about how to do that differently for next time. But just bringing a little bit of that lighter blue in. Just little bits. Don't go for symmetry or perfection. We're just expressing that movement of the ocean there. And that's it. For real. That's it. We're done. It's that simple. We did our sky, we did our sand, we did our sea, and we did our sailboats. And right there, just like that. Let me separate these without too much nonsense. There we go. Hold them up side by side. Get them in the camera, Melissa. There we go. Not a whole lot of difference between those two. Every painting should be a little bit different, but I tried to stick to it here so that you had a good reference point. Let's see if I can bring that back up for you, in case you're still working. But that's it, you guys. Super simple. I like to keep it simple, keep it easy, so that nobody gets stressed out, least of all me. Apparently this is going to stress me out, though, trying to hang those things back up. I've got a lot of new stuff coming up on wood. I don't know if you've seen this one, but we've got Golden Moon, the silhouette of the mountains and the trees with that golden moon in the sky. Let me grab a couple of other wooden projects I've got going on. Since it's summertime, I've got a fun sunflower with some shiny gold. Look at that, isn't that fantastic? And the dimension and depth on those leaves is so easy to achieve. I can't wait for you to try it. And then I'm super proud of this one. Let me zoom out here a minute for this. It's kind of a big deal. All right, and then finally this is another new one for my friends that are fans of practical magic. Did you see that? It just fell down, didn't it? Somebody got hurt. Back to practical magic. We've got some salt, we've got some rosemary, we've got some lavender, and we've got love. So this is also going to be up in the shop this week. Anyway, I had a great time painting with you. I hope you had a nice, simple, relaxing little session. It was a lot of fun, huh? So come back and see me next time, and we'll paint again real soon. Be well, take care of yourselves, send me pictures, and I'll see you real soon.